Hey, hello guys, how you doing? All right, I'm gonna do a little bit of reading today. We're here in my world history or US history classroom. And I'm gonna start making some videos, reading and discussing the textbook. We'll be reading from this textbook here, which is United States History, Prentice Hall, right? And we're in the chapter, The Issues with the Gilded Age. Okay. And what we're going to be talking about today are the political and economic challenges of that time. Why it matters. While Congress enacted many major reforms during Reconstruction, it passed very few measures between 1877 and 1900. Instead, inaction and political corruption characterized the political sense during the Gilded Age. This raised questions to whether or not democracy could succeed in a time dominated by large and powerful industrial corporations and men of great wealth. So what this is touching on, right, is the period of the late 19th century after Reconstruction, when there was great corruption in the United States political office. And there was the heads of industries in the northern regions that were lining the pockets of these politicians, okay? And they were pretty much oppressing the society at large, okay? The individual was being oppressed and the big business was thriving. Balance of power creates stalemate. Party loyalties were so evenly divided that no faction or group gained control for any period of time. Only twice between 1877 and 1897 did either the Republicans or Democrats gain control of the White House and both houses of Congress at the same time. Furthermore, neither held control for more than 2 years in a row. This made it very difficult to pass new laws. Most of the elections were very close as well, allowing those who lost to block new legislation until they got power back. In comparison to Lincoln, the presidents of the Gilded Age appeared particularly weak. They won by slim margin and seemed to lack integrity. Rutherford B Hayes owed his election in 1876 to a secret deal, and that's touching on the Compromise of 1877, which pulled the military out of the South and allowed for a lot of the planter class to gain control in the South, causing great harm to the African-American community in the South. Benjamin Harrison became only the second president in history to lose the popular vote, but win the Electoral College. We saw that recently with the election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Chester Arthur, who took the helm following James Garfield's assassination, upset so many of his fellow Republicans that he failed to win his own party's presidential nomination in 1884. The most noteworthy president of the era was Grover Cleveland. In an era known for its corruption, Cleveland maintained a reputation of integrity. He once observed, "A Democratic thief is as bad as a Republican thief." Cleveland enjoyed an extremely rapid rise of political prominence. In 1881, running as a reformer, he won the race for mayor in Buffalo, New York. A year later, he became the governor of New York. And in 1884, he became the first Democrat to win the White House in 24 years. In 1888, even though he won the popular vote, Cleveland lost to Benjamin Harris, but Cleveland came back to re-win the presidency in 1892. So the checkpoint question that's being asked here is, why did the federal government fail to make significant political gains between 1877 and 1897? And what's talked about here is that, one, you had political corruption, and two, neither party, the Democrats nor the Republicans, were able to gain significant control of the country. They would either win the presidency, but they could not win the houses of Congress, okay? Or they would win the houses of Congress and lose the presidency. Corruption plagues national politics. Grover Cleveland's reputation for honesty was the exception. Many government officials routinely accepted bribes. As Henry Adams, the great-grandson of John Adams, observed, one might search the whole list of Congress judiciary and executive from 1870 to 1895 and find little but damaged reputation. Political cartoons raised the alarm. Besides such writers as Mark Twain, political cartoonists expressed their concern about the damaging effect of corruption and big money. The Bosses of the Senate, one of the most famous political cartoons of the time, drawn by Joseph Kepler, shows a cluster of businessmen representing various trusts glaring down on the chambers of Senate. Okay, and we're looking at this this political cartoon in the textbook, and what they're saying is that the Senate it has to answer to the big bosses of industry. Okay, if they don't answer to them correctly, then they may be stripped of their position. Thomas Vast did a series of cartoons which exposed the illegal activities of William Marcy Boss Tweed, a powerful New York City politician. Eventually, Tweed was arrested. However, he escaped and fled to Spain. Do you really think that he escaped on his own volition, or did he use some of his money and political party to free himself? While there, Tweed was identified through one of Nast's cartoons. The spoil system dominates the government. Political parties and spoil system were central components of the politics during the Gilded Age. Under the spoil system, which was first used by President Andrew Jackson, politicians awarded government jobs to loyal party workers with little regard to their qualifications. Parties held elaborate rallies and parades to get out the vote. However, candidates for the presidency did not take part in the campaigns. They felt it lowered the representation or the reputation of the presidency. Parties developed sophisticated political machines that reached virtually into every ward, in every precinct, and in every city in the nation. The spoil system served as the glue that helped make the party so powerful. The Postmaster General, who headed the United States Postal Service, for example, could reward thousands of supporters with jobs. Likewise, other officials could and did use federal contracts to convince people to vote for their candidates. Ironically, political participation probably got a boost from the spoil system and the fierce partisanship of the era. About 75% to 80% of all those who could vote did vote in the presidential election during the Gilded Age. Okay, so we're starting to see in the American political system the idea of, you rub my back and I'll rub yours. Civil service reform promotes honest government. So we have civil service reform, which is similar to the civil service exam of Confucianist China that forced the Ming dynasty, right, and I believe it's the Qin dynasty, to be honest in their political dealings. The feelings that the spoil system corrupted government, or at least made it terribly inefficient, prompted a number of prominent figures to promote civil service reform. The civil service is a system that included federal jobs at the executive branch. In a reform system, most government workers would get their jobs due to their expertise and maintain them regardless of which political party won the election. Reforming the spoil system did cause controversy. Without the spoil system, politicians felt they would not attract the people needed to run their parties. Independent attempts by politicians to change the system failed. When Rutherford B Hayes took office in 1877, he worked for civil service reform. He even placed well-known reformers in high office. However, the Republican Party did not support his reform efforts. It took the assassination of President James Garfield by Charles J. Gautier to make civil service reform a reality. Gautier shot Garfield because he believed that the Republican Party had not fulfilled its promise to give him a government job. Now, it's very interesting that Rutherford B Hayes is the president that is working for the civil service reform when he too is one of the presidents that had to compromise to get into office. Chester A. Arthur became president after the assassination of Garfield. While Arthur defended the spoils system, he supported the movement of civil service reform, which had been strengthened because of public indignation over Garfield's assassination. Arthur resigned or signed the Pendleton Civil Service Act in 1883. This act established a civil service commission, which wrote a civil service exam. Individuals who wanted to work for the government had to take the exam, and getting a job depended on doing well on the exam, not on manipulating one's political connections. Initially, the act covered only a small percentage of federal employees, but its reach grew over time, reducing the power of the spoil system. So the checkpoint question that is asked here is, how did the spoil system lead to government corruption and eventual government reform? Okay, and so an example that we have of the spoil system that leads to government corruption and the ultimate government tribulation, the assassination of the president, is you started to have people that believed that they should have jobs, okay, based on who they know. And the spoil system, even though it gained political popularity, or it caused political popularity and political activity, right? It actually led to the downfall and the stagnation of the government, okay? And ultimately, it led to President Garfield being assassinated because this gentleman, Charles J. Gautier, believed that he should have received a job, okay? Now, all of this turmoil with the assassination of Garfield led people to see that we have a need for a civic service exam, okay? And then we have the Pendleton Civil Service Act, which puts a civic service exam into place, and you cannot get government position unless you pass that exam. So it's no longer are you put into a position by who you know, right? But now you are put in position by what you know. We continue. Economic issues challenge the nation. The tariff and monetary policies were critical economic issues during the Gilded Age. The tariff issue sharply divided the Democrats and Republicans. Monetary policies gave rise to independent political parties or movements that disagreed with the major party's commitment to the gold standard. Using the gold standard meant that the government would use gold as a basis of the nation's currency. Okay, so we're starting to see a challenging of the gold standard. Okay, and every dollar in America is backed by its weight in gold or its price in gold. Okay, so let's talk about the tariffs. Americans debate the tariff question. The debate over the tariff had deep roots in American history. The tax on imports of manufactured goods and some agricultural products was created to protect newly developed industries. Okay, so this is after we move out of the Civil War, right? The government puts a tax on tariffs. Any goods that are coming from outside of the United States into the United States is going to have a tariff tax to it, okay, which is going to cause that product to become more expensive. The hope is with that product becoming more expensive from another part of the world, that Americans are going to be persuaded to buy the cheaper products or the less expensive products in America, right, that don't have the tariff on them. So understanding how that goes. Okay, Where did we stop? Since then, the debate to lower or increase tariffs continued. Differences over the tariff had divided the Federalists and Jeffersonians and the Democrats and Whigs. During the Gilded Age, it divided the Republicans and Democrats. The tariff question became a major issue during the presidential election of 1888. The Republicans favored a high tariff, arguing that it would allow American industries to grow and promote jobs in manufacturing. Okay, now remember, a lot of the Republicans, right, were in favor of government intervention. Okay, you had the governments intervening, the radical Republicans having the Militia Act, with having, you know, soldiers in the South, having soldiers in the West. Okay, so the Republicans were in favor of the government putting a tariff on the goods that are being shipped into the United States, and therefore promoting the goods of the United States people. All right, let's continue. So we said here, we'll read this again. The Republicans favored a high tariff, arguing that it would allow American industries to grow and promote jobs in manufacturing. Democrats countered that high tariffs increased the cost of goods to consumers and made it harder for American farmers to sell their goods abroad, okay? Because you end up getting caught into a tariff war. And let's say that we have, let's pick a crop. Let's say that we have cherries that are coming into the United States from Chile. And as those cherries come into the United States, there is a tariff that is placed on those cherries. Because there's a tariff that is placed on those cherries, okay, the Chilean cherry farmers are not selling as many cherries in America as they would like. So in return, if there's a good that United States sends to Chile, let's say steel, okay, then the Chileans are going to place a tariff on steel, causing the Chilean people to find alternative sources of steel instead of buying American steel. So then the steel industry does not have a foothold in Chile because of the tariff. So now we have a tariff war between Chile and the United States. And this is something that happened it happens all the time, but the last tariff war that we had came between the United States and China, when there was a huge issue of aluminum. Okay, so we had a tariff war that occurred then. Okay, let's continue. Conflicts develop over monetary policy. Two related factors turned monetary policy into bitter issues during the Gilded Age. During the Civil War, the federal government issued paper money, known as greenbacks. After the war, because they had contributed to wartime inflation, a rise in prices, the government retired or got rid of the greenbacks. Around the same time, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1873. This law reversed the government policy of making both gold and silver coins. Those who favored the minting of silver, in other words, considered silver as money, protested against what they termed the crime of 1873, and prompted Congress to mint silver dollars. Nonetheless, the debate over whether to consider both gold and silver as money or only gold as money continued. Bankers and others involved in the international trade feared that considering silver as money would undermine the economy. In contrast, most farmers favored coining silver to create inflation. They hoped the rise of prices would increase their income. You will read more about this dispute in the next section. The next section is the farmers and populism. Okay, so the question that we have here for Chapter 16, Section 2, the last checkpoint question is, why did the Republicans and Democrats differ in their views of the tariff issue? Okay, and the issue that they had was about strengthening the American economy. Okay, the Republicans believed that having high tariffs would cause people to buy American, okay, and create a stronger international or a stronger American economy. The Democrats, on the other hand, believe that if you place a tariff on the goods, that other countries are going to place tariffs on goods being sent to their country from America, therefore making causing issues in the industry's economics. They also believe that tariffs rise the prices of goods in America, which would ultimately hurt Americans by preventing them from buying certain goods that were needed. Okay, so that is the end of Chapter 16, Section 2. Some of the vocabulary words that we should know now are the spoil system, the civic service exam, the Pendleton Civil Service Act, and the gold standard. Okay, we will read more about the gold standard, the spoil system, and the civic service exam as we move forward. Okay, so I just wanted to read that. Thank you guys. I hope this helps you out in your reading and in your understanding. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please go ahead and put them in the chat, or not in the chat, I'm sorry, put them in the comment section, and I'll try my best to answer them any way that we can. So thank you guys for coming. Remember, keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you will reach your destination. Have a good one.